Chapter 61. Disgustingly twisted, mutilated flesh was spliced with platinum and wire. Sharp metal spikes and massive, gripping claws constantly morphed and undulated. Large, blue-tinted sections of silver solidified into living armor under the inhuman garish visage of what was once Logis Fugel. Now a self-aware Platinum Rapids collective, the first thing the hideous face seemed to see was part of the army of the Golden Soldiers, which had now overrun the bunker lab of the metal island. In a corner of the ancient science bay, D3 crouched while Sully hovered near, one arm around her shoulder. Mr. Blue stood defiantly in the center of the room, watching his enemies gather before him. The Time Lord's piercing, azure marble eyes stared out from his head unfathomably, calculating, deducting, weighing options. The Platinum Rapids turned to face Mr. Blue and his two human companions, stranded and helpless. Its first heavy step toward the Time Lord cracked the foundation of the bunker, and every pace thereafter sounded like a titanic, crushing impact. The Gold Rapids followed lead and continued to fill the old science bay until there was standing room only, no possibility of escape. So, strangled inside was the group. It felt as if the very oxygen was being repossessed, then pulled from the lungs of the retired Commodore and young Don Rothlanders III. All of the unified, reprogrammable architectural production infrastructure devices had deemed the humans unworthy even of this sickeningly stale, metallic Mercurian air. Sully's vision began to blur. He knew he would lose consciousness soon, and for some reason, thought of Ruckus fondly, wishing he hadn't had to witness the violent death of the Silver Rapids quite so clearly. Sully had not retired, no, because apparently time travel was a form of warfare. To maintain your very existence itself sometimes is war, if not, at least a struggle. No, the retired Commodore had not really retired at all, Sully thought to himself as he watched D3 break down into tears. The Platinum Rapids stood facing down the Time Lord. It retracted its right arm behind it, long claw appendage growing, folding in on itself, becoming a massive, wire platinum fist, as large as a bulldozer's shovel and infinitely more dense. The Time Lord stared down at D3. Don Rothlanders III stared up at him with pleading eyes, tears soaking her cheek. Mr. Blue smiled as the Platinum Rapids sent a massive, powerful platinum fist hurtling toward him at lethal force and trajectory. D3 screamed the most blood-curdling, chilling scream she had ever produced from within her tiny frame, a forceful wail to the cosmos, even existence itself, to stop dead in its tracks. For unknown reasons, the universe obliged, and the Time Lord grinned, staring at the shiny metal mass of mammoth knuckles and wire, the size of a moving van, frozen in time, several inches from his dusty cobalt suit. "I get it, Saber!" Mr. Blue shouted to the ceiling, as there was nowhere else to look. Golden Soldiers stood frozen, an immaculate, glittering, and ornate, yet silent and motionless army which crowded around, restricting all movement. Sully slowly, painfully tried to stand. His knees popped, his back ached, and he could go on, ad nausea and infinitude with his complaints. D3 was hyperventilating. The Time Lord knelt by her, taking her wrists, enveloping the shaking young lady in a sudden calm. Mr. Blue slowly walked her to a standing position. Then, the Time Lord's arms were around D3 protectively, as Sully grimaced next to him, trying to catch his breath and level his blood pressure. "Sully, are you all right?" Mr. Blue asked.
"Oh boy, I feel like a living pile of dog shit. Luckily, I maintain a stiff upper lip."
"Look, Sully, Don."
"Because I am certain you have an explanation for nearly frightening an old Commodore to the point of burdening his jockeys."
"How very vivid," Mr. Blue shouted. He smoothed his lapis tie. "Saber let me think she'd simply, I don't know, used me for a bride here. The genius of her triumph, though, the key to her success, was that she allowed me to believe I'd intercept Dr. Dolker and her wife here on Mercury in 2567 at the precise moment D's seat intervened to steal them and their old science lab. En masse,
kidnapping them to Vrem in 2667. I presumed I was here to stop the first wave of Deceit's negative temporal arc, the paradox which powers her appetitus.
Sully coughed and shook his head.
Makes not a lick of sense to me. Not of it. Not a damn word. Horrifically complicated. Unpredictable. You have to keep a bloody scorecard or some damn database in your pocket to understand the bloody hell went on where and when did what. Century here, century there. All this time travel backlash.
The Time Lord held up a single finger. Miraculously, the cranky, retired old Commodore shut the hell up for a crabby moment and lit a smoke. Mr. Blue said,
And that's not all. Saber distracted Deceit, fumbled up her plans for Dawn.
Plans for me? D3, a modicum of embarrassment, wiped her eyes clear and fixed her disheveled hair as she demanded, I absolutely loathe the sound of plans for Dawn. The way you say that, it sucks. All weird. Forget the fact that I frickin' hate being called Dawn. Dawn was my great-grandmother and my grandmother. People called them Dawn, not me. My mother was named Jasper for some, reason. Look, how did you do that? Is this a Time Lord or High Lord or whatever you call yourself, thing? The Time Lord blinked, turned his attention to Sully and continued.
Saber wanted me here, D3, because D3 is the late, as in most recent, great from 1997 to 2467, would be great daughter of Jade.
Sully blew out a smoke from the side of his mouth, unimpressed.
Name means nothing to me, mate.
Oh, right, you weren't there. Mr. Blue snapped his fingers.
Snap,
he exclaimed.
Regardless, Saber destructed Deceit so I could save D3, a young lady whom is beautiful yet also a tortured genius prone to isolation and brooding moods due to a power that she cannot comprehend and can barely control. The power to stop time itself.
How did... D3 began to ask.
I know you. I think I know you. You sure as hell don't look like Jade. Fine, old boy.
Sully visibly deflated.
Can't we just get back to bed and go home now?
The Time Lord in the dusty cobalt suit cracked his knuckles.
Sully, my dear Sully, have you yet to witness my next trick?
Mr. Blue's eyes began to emanate a smoky amber energy. Tiny particles, the color of a medallion, drifted and wafted into the golden mist. What is that? Is he?
I am self-dedicating a portion of my remaining temporal incarnation force to resurrect the trace of ruckus I can find.
The illumination grew in intensity. The Time Lord's bright golden energy turned into amber, then into neon yellow, and into white, drifting vaporous Time Lord essence, searching about the golden and platinum warriors like hundreds of tentacles. Mr. Blue began to unnaturally shake, grunting in pain. Sully tried to grip Mr. Blue, but the Time Lord pushed him away, yelling in intense pain. Before their eyes, Sully Brontworth and D3 could not believe as reality rearranged itself in front of them. A single particle of blinding bright silver emerged from the darkness, then replicated. The Time Lord's companions watched him become completely immersed in white light as the silver particle doubled, then quadrupled, then octupled, then continued to aggressively grow in numbers exponentially until the silver-colored merged with the light that exploded convulsively from Mr. Blue. Aided by the focused Artron energy of Mr. Blue, a single, solitary survivor of the Silver Rapids was found and restored from the severe injuries and near-death coma. During a forced temporal subtime field created by the regeneration energy of a Time Lord, the survivor, a female, used stored genetic templates to replicate her entire race over eons and transform the gigantic planet known as Mercury and all the leftover valuable minerals and metals, such as raw gold and platinum, into a beautiful and breathtaking, glimmering and endless void of thriving, countless city structures. This was now the home and domain of the Silver Rapids for the rest of known time. D3 witnessed the entire planet's surface change in a matter of seconds before her eyes, as did Sully. They were stunned, watching an entire species grow and transform, deconstructing the Golden Soldiers and Platinum Rapids into tiny cities of silver. The day and night and tiny lights of the tiny Silver Rapids civilization blinked on and off as they sped through a millennia of time on Mercury in seconds. Then, all was done. The Time Lord collapsed, drained to empty by the exertion, sick and nauseous. His hair had turned a bright gray, and his eyes had a milky look about them. His sunken cheeks made Mr. Blue look as if he was in his 80s. Not a very kind 80s either. D3 felt a hollow sadness in her stomach as she stared down at the frail, ancient Time Lord, so very helpless. She understood that Mr. Blue had done all of this for them, the Silver Rapids, Ruckus, the only one of the 3 races of nanotechnological beings to actually be alive. His frailty was also a sacrifice of pure life force for her, in one form or another. D3 was certain. The emancipated Time Lord had saved her life. He spat bright orange blood on the floor before Mr. Blue crept to a standing, though no longer able to fully stand up straight as his countless years bore down upon the tired old Time Lord. He pointed behind his companions to where Purge stood, untouched by the millennia of time. The battered, antique old blue grandfather clock was a sight for sore eyes. Sully and D3 followed Mr. Blue as he quietly and warily entered his temporal bioship, tossing his dusty azure sport jacket off and rolling up his cobalt sleeves, then loosening his lapis tie. On the holographic view screen, he showed them Mercury now, pure silver and light.
A shiny beacon of free, unlimited energy for weary travelers,
the old blue Time Lord said softly. He input coordinates. D3 felt her tummy pleasantly do a flip as Purge dematerialized. She found a cup of hot chocolate in her hands and a blanket around her shoulders, not having noticed the old retired Commodore dotting on her. Where to? She looked up to the Time Lord in his aquatic steampunk control console. Although aged incredibly, nearly forced to regeneration by his final adventure with the reprogrammable architectural production infrastructure devices, the devious and cunning old Mr. Blue could not suppress the twinkle in his eye as he mischievously winked at his young new companion.
France, Chateau de Bellevue, 1767.
Chapter 8. Jade giggled as she peeled out and away from the tired old mausoleum in the sad, ancient graveyard. She was feeling young, truly alive. Time for something new. In a last glance in the rearview mirror of the graveyard, Jade thought about how all of those people were gone. They had died, not her. Now, it was her time to live. A stranger in blue stood in front of a beaten, tired old azure grandfather clock. He stood transfixed as he took a tired, sad breath and watched Jade disappear into the past. Chapter 9.
Come on.
The stranger in black appeared out of nowhere.
Let's go get a damn drink.
Mr. Blue finished gazing at this sad old graveyard. Stone monuments lay cold and alone, dotting the sparse hills around as the thin air made everything exceptionally clear and chilly in the fall sunset.
Not your ride.
Mr. Black placed his hand on the stranger in blue's arm, stopping him from unlocking Purge.
Mine.
Mr. Blue followed the fellow time traveler in black into the ancient ebony obelisk. Chapter 61, Part 2. The sound of Black's IO-TARDIS exiting reality was in effect he liked to call Omega Eraser. He explained this to his second incarnation, Mr. Blue, that a TARDIS resonates that groaning and creaking sound because Omega, a founding creator of Gallifrey society, is wiping the TARDIS away from time to rewrite it somewhere else on the galactic chalkboard. Jade heard the noise as she drove from the graveyard, hearing it so clearly, so loudly, throbbing in her skull. She was forced to drop her car phone and focus on the steering wheel. She had no more straightened out her aspire when another hideously deep, grinding, throbbing, pounding sound assaulted her. She could feel it in her time-sensitive bones. Something bad was about to happen. The violet wardrobe TARDIS materialized in front of her car nearly instantly, and Jade had no time to swerve, grinding down on the brakes, but not in time. Without a seatbelt, Jade's sternum was cracked before she was violently thrown through her own windshield to land on the hood of her Aspire. Blood and glass and broken bones, now her only sudden, excruciatingly painful reality. Saber had appeared instantly, exactly 1 year from the moment Purge had landed on the other side of the graveyard and ejected her, along with an unconscious Deceit and the Violet Stranger's TARDIS, currently taking the form of an intricately designed, orchid-colored wardrobe. The stunning and battle-scarred time agent breathed heavily as she coughed out verbal blocking transfer computations to make her katana appear. Saber's eyes became silver, and she poised the weapon above Deceit, the time agent having finally defeated the renegade time lady once and for all. As Saber thrust down the killing stroke, the feigning weak and unconscious Deceit rolled over and shot Saber with both EM wrenches on full power. Instantly, the time agent was frozen. Deceit stood. If I can't destroy a fixed point, then the High Lord technology, by God, can pose one. The devious High Lord heiress cracked her neck, and with a sickening intensity, a psychotic smile firmly in place on her luscious, plump red lips. Behind her, Jade groaned in complete agony, terror, and fear. Deceit stopped smiling. She strode angrily over to Jade, whom lay helpless on her smashed Aspire, grabbing the seriously injured young woman by the hair, wrenching her toward the orchid wardrobe. Saber's time stasis field collapsed, just as the Violent Stranger's TARDIS doors slammed irrevocably shut. The time agent could clearly hear Jade inside, howling and fighting desperately for her life. Saber heard Jade's screams, cut short by a sickening crunch, and then she heard Deceit laugh as the orchid wardrobe vanished.